The train lurched to a stop at Durango's dusty station in southwestern Colorado, and Zelda Simpson pressed her gloved hand against the window, her heart hammering so hard she feared it might crack her ribs right open. 3 weeks of travel from Boston, 3 weeks of second-guessing the hasty decision that had brought her west to marry a man she had never met. And now here, she stood on the precipice of a completely new life in this wild territory in the summer of 1882. The platform bustled with activity as passengers disembarked, their shoes clattering against weathered wood. Zelda smoothed her navy traveling dress, suddenly aware of how impractical the heavy fabric was for this dry heat. Back east, she had been considered plain, unremarkable, a spinster at 23 with no prospects, and even fewer options after her father's death left her penniless. The advertisement in the newspaper had seemed like divine intervention at the time. A rancher in Colorado seeking a wife, promising a home and security in exchange for companionship and domestic partnership. She clutched her carpetbag tighter and stepped down from the train, her eyes scanning the crowd for the man who had signed his letters simply as Oliver. His correspondence had been sparse but kind, describing his ranch in simple terms, mentioning his cattle and the mountains and the quiet life he led. He had not asked for much in return, only honesty and a willingness to build something together. She had provided honesty in most regards, but there was one small detail she had conveniently omitted from her letters, one truth that now sat heavy in her stomach like a stone. The crowd thinned, and Zelda found herself standing alone on the platform, watching families reunite and businessmen hurry toward waiting carriages. The sun beat down mercilessly, and perspiration began to dampen the collar of her dress. Perhaps he had changed his mind. Perhaps he had taken one look at her plain features through some magical foresight and decided she would not suit after all. "Miss Simpson," the voice came from behind her, deep and cautious. Zelda turned and found herself face to face with the tallest man she had ever seen. Oliver McAllister stood well over 6 feet, with shoulders broad enough to block out the sun and hands that looked like they could gentle a wild horse or build a house from nothing. His face was weathered from years of outdoor work, lines crinkling around striking blue eyes that studied her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Dark hair curled slightly beneath his worn hat, and his clothing, though clean, bore the marks of a working man, practical and sturdy. "Mr. McAllister." Her voice came out smaller than she intended. He removed his hat, revealing more of that dark hair, and something softened in his expression. "Oliver, please, just Oliver. I hope the journey was not too difficult." "It was long but manageable, thank you." She searched his face for disappointment, for regret, but found only a gentle assessment, almost shy in its thoroughness. "You look tired. We have about an hour's ride to the ranch. I brought the wagon, figured you would have luggage." He gestured toward a sturdy wagon hitched to 2 strong horses. "If you are hungry, we could stop at the hotel restaurant first." The kindness in his offer nearly undid her. "The ranch is fine. I confess I am eager to see my new home." Something flickered across his features, pleasure perhaps, and he nodded. "Let me get your things." She had only the carpetbag and 1 trunk, her entire life condensed into 2 containers. Oliver lifted both as though they weighed nothing and secured them in the wagon bed. He helped her up to the seat with surprising gentleness, his large hand steadying her elbow, and then climbed up beside her. The wagon lurched into motion, and Durango began to fall away behind them. The landscape opened up in ways that made Zelda's chest tighten with unexpected emotion. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still touched with snow despite the summer heat. The high desert stretched out in shades of gold and green, dotted with scrub brush and juniper trees. The sky seemed impossibly large, a blue so pure it almost hurt to look at. This was nothing like Boston with its cramped streets and gray buildings. This was wilderness, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. It takes some getting used to, Oliver said quietly as though reading her thoughts. The space, I mean. Some folks find it lonely. I think it is beautiful, she answered honestly. I have never seen anything like it. He glanced at her and she caught the hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. The ranch sits up against the foothills. There is a creek that runs through the property, never goes dry even in the worst summers. The house is not fancy, but it is solid. I built most of it myself. They rode in silence for a while, the only sounds the creaking of the wagon and the steady clip of hooves against packed earth. Zelda stole glances at the man beside her, this stranger who was to be her husband. His hands on the reins were scarred and calloused, capable hands. His profile was strong, hawkish almost, but there was something gentle in the way he handled the horses, the way he had helped her into the wagon. "I should tell you something," she said suddenly, the words bursting out before she could stop them. "Before we go any further, there is something I did not mention in my letters." Oliver's jaw tightened slightly, but he kept his eyes on the road. "All right, I cannot cook well." The confession tumbled out in a rush. "Actually, I can barely cook at all. I can make tea and toast bread and boil eggs, but anything beyond that tends to end in disaster. I tried to learn, truly I did, but it never came naturally, and my father was content with simple meals, so I never pushed myself to improve. I know you probably expected someone competent in the kitchen, and I should have told you before, but I was afraid you would not want me if you knew, and I had nowhere else to go, and I am so very sorry for the deception." She ran out of breath and fell silent, her hands twisted together in her lap. The wagon continued rolling forward. Oliver said nothing for a long moment, and Zelda felt her heart sink lower with each passing second. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Is that all?" she blinked. "Is that all? Did you hear what I said? I cannot cook. I will likely burn everything I touch." "I heard you." He glanced at her then, and his expression was so earnest it made her chest ache. "Zelda, I have been cooking for myself for 10 years. I have eaten more burned bacon and scorched beans than any man should have to endure. If you can make tea and toast bread, you are already ahead of where I expected to be. Whatever you make, I will eat it gladly. I did not ask you to come here to be my cook. I asked you to come here because I was tired of being alone." The simplicity of his words, the raw honesty in them, brought sudden tears to Zelda's eyes. She blinked them back quickly, turning her face away so he would not see. "That is very kind of you to say. It is not kindness, it is truth." He paused, then added more quietly, "I was worried about a lot of things before today. Worried you would take one look at me and want to get back on that train. Worried you would find the ranch too isolated or too rough. Worried I would not know what to say to you. But your cooking skills. That never even crossed my mind as something to worry about. You should have worried about it," she said, a watery laugh escaping. "I once caught water on fire." His eyebrows shot up. "Now that is a story I need to hear. I was trying to make soup. I got distracted reading a book and forgot I had left the pot on the stove. All the water boiled away, and whatever was stuck to the bottom started smoking, and then somehow caught fire. My father came running in thinking the house was burning down." She shook her head at the memory. "He insisted on making our meals after that." To her surprise, Oliver laughed, a deep, warm sound that seemed to roll up from his chest. "Well, I promise to keep you away from books while you are cooking. That might not be enough. My talents for disaster in the kitchen are quite advanced. Then we will figure it out together. I can teach you what I know, which is not much, but it keeps a person alive. And if we burn a few meals along the way, so be it. We will not starve. The knot in Zelda's stomach began to loosen slightly. She studied Oliver's profile again. The easy way he sat on the wagon seat, the competent handling of the reins. Perhaps this would be all right. Perhaps her gamble on this stranger and this wild place would not end in disaster after all. The ranch appeared gradually, first as a dark smudge against the foothills, then taking shape into a sturdy house, a barn, several outbuildings, and corrals holding horses and cattle. It was modest but well maintained, everything speaking of careful attention and hard work. The house itself was built of logs, chinked tight against the weather with a covered porch running along the front. Curtains hung in the windows, which surprised her. "My mother's," Oliver said, noticing her gaze. "She passed 5 years ago, but I kept some of her things. Wanted the place to feel like a home, not just a bunkhouse. I am sorry about your mother. She would have liked you." He pulled the wagon to a stop near the house. "She was always after me to find someone settled down properly. My father died when I was 16, and she worried about me being alone after she was gone." He climbed down and came around to help her, his hands circling her waist to lift her down as though she weighed nothing. For a moment they stood close enough that she could smell the clean scent of him, soap and leather and something else, something like sage. Then he stepped back, clearing his throat. "Let me show you inside." The house was bigger than it had looked from outside, with a main room that served as kitchen and living area, 2 bedrooms, and a small room Oliver had converted into an office for managing the ranch accounts. Everything was neat, almost Spartan, but clean and well cared for. The kitchen had a good iron stove, a sturdy table, shelves lined with dishes and supplies. "I had the Reverend come by last week," Oliver said, setting her trunk down in the larger bedroom. "Told him we would want to marry as soon as you arrived, if that suits you. He can come tomorrow if you are willing, or we can wait if you need more time." Zelda looked around the room that would be hers, at least for tonight. The bed was large, covered with a worn but clean quilt. A dresser stood against one wall, a washstand with a pitcher and basin against another. Through the window, she could see the mountains in the distance, painted gold by the lowering sun. "Tomorrow is fine," she said quietly. "I came here to marry you, and I see no reason to delay." He nodded, something like relief crossing his features. "I will sleep in the other room tonight, of course. Want you to feel comfortable." "Thank you." They stood in awkward silence for a moment, 2 strangers about to bind their lives together, until Oliver cleared his throat again. "You must be hungry. Let me see what I can put together for supper." "You can rest, get settled. I could help. Not tonight. Tonight you rest. Tomorrow we will tackle the kitchen together." He left, pulling the door partially closed behind him, and Zelda sank onto the edge of the bed. Her hands were shaking slightly, the enormity of what she had done finally settling over her. She was in Colorado, in the home of a man she had met mere hours ago, about to marry him and make a life in this wild place. It should have terrified her more than it did. Instead, she felt something strange blooming in her chest, something that felt almost like hope. The smell of cooking meat and coffee drifted in from the main room. Zelda stood and moved to the washstand, pouring water into the basin and washing the train dust from her face and hands. She unpinned her hair, shaking out the dark brown waves, then repinned it more loosely. Her reflection in the small mirror above the washstand showed a tired woman with unremarkable features, but her brown eyes held a spark they had not held in months, maybe years. "Supper is ready," Oliver called from the other room. She found him setting plates on the table, simple fare but more than she had expected. Fried beef, beans, bread that looked slightly lopsided but smelled wonderful, coffee in thick mugs. "You made bread?" she asked, surprised. My mother taught me, it is not fancy, but it fills the belly. He pulled out a chair for her, another small courtesy that warmed her. I hope it suits. The food was simple but good, seasoned well and cooked properly. They ate in companionable silence for a while, the awkwardness between them easing slightly. Outside, the sun continued its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Tell me about the ranch," Zelda said finally. "You mentioned cattle in your letters, but not much else." Oliver set down his coffee mug, seeming pleased by the question. "I have about 300 head right now, mostly Herefords. Good beef cattle, hardy enough for the winters here. I run them on open range during the summer, bring them down closer to the ranch when the weather turns. I have 2 hired men who help during the busy seasons, Marcus and Tom, good workers both. They have a bunkhouse on the far side of the barn. There is a garden plot behind the house, though I will confess it is not much to look at. I keep it alive, but barely." "I could tend the garden," Zelda offered. "I am better with plants than I am with stoves. That would be welcome." He smiled at her, the expression transforming his weathered face into something almost handsome. "There is a chicken coop too, needs some repairs but still functional. Fresh eggs would be good. I can collect eggs without causing disaster, I think. Then we are already ahead." He paused, then added more seriously, "It is a good life here, Zelda, but it is not easy. The winters are hard, the work never really stops, and we are a fair distance from town. Some days you might not see another soul besides me. I want you to know what you are getting into. I know I came from a city, but my life there was not easy either," she said quietly. "After my father died, I had no money, no family, no prospects. I was staying with a cousin who made it clear I was a burden. Whatever this is, it feels like a chance at something real. I'm not afraid of hard work or isolation. I am more afraid of being somewhere I am not wanted. You are wanted here." The words came out firm, certain. "I know we are strangers, and I know this is unusual, but I meant what I said in my letters. I am looking for a partner, someone to build a life with. If you are willing to try, so am I." Zelda met his eyes across the table, seeing the sincerity there, the quiet hope. "I am willing." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Then Oliver stood collecting the plates. "You should get some rest. Tomorrow will be a big day." She helped him clear the table despite his protests, and they washed the dishes together in a silence that felt less awkward now, more comfortable. When everything was clean and put away, they stood in the main room, the last light fading from the windows. "Sleep well, Zelda," Oliver said softly. "You too, Oliver." She retreated to her room and changed into her nightgown, then slipped between the sheets. The bed was comfortable, the quilt soft with age and washing. Through the window, she could see stars beginning to emerge, more stars than she had ever seen in Boston, scattered across the darkening sky like diamonds on velvet. In the other room, she heard Oliver moving around, the creak of the smaller bed as he settled in. Tomorrow she would marry this man. Tomorrow her new life would truly begin. The thought should have kept her awake with anxiety, but instead, exhaustion pulled her down into sleep, deep and dreamless. Morning arrived with birdsong and the smell of coffee. Zelda woke disoriented for a moment, her mind struggling to place her surroundings. Then memory returned in a rush. Colorado. The ranch. Oliver. She dressed quickly in her best dress, a modest gray gown that she had been saving for the wedding, and pinned her hair up carefully. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Oliver already dressed in clean clothes, his hair still damp from washing. He had made coffee and oatmeal, setting a bowl for her at the table. "Morning," he said, looking almost nervous. "Reverend Taylor should be here around noon. I sent word yesterday when we passed his place." "Then I suppose we should have breakfast and prepare," Zelda said, sitting down. The oatmeal was thick and plain but edible. She added a spoonful of honey from the jar on the table and found it improved considerably. They ate in silence, both seeming to feel the weight of what was coming. After breakfast, Zelda insisted on helping Oliver tidy the house, wanting something to do with her nervous energy. They worked together, sweeping floors and dusting surfaces, and Zelda found herself watching him, noticing small things. The way he moved with economy and purpose. The carefulness with which he handled his mother's few decorative items. The sidelong glances he kept giving her, as though making sure she was still real, still here. Around mid-morning, Oliver went out to tend to some ranch chores, and Zelda took the opportunity to explore the house more thoroughly. In the main room, she found a small shelf of books, mostly practical volumes on animal husbandry and farming, but a few novels tucked in as well. One was a collection of poetry, its spine cracked from repeated reading. She pulled it out and found an inscription on the inside cover in delicate handwriting. "To my son, may you always find beauty in words. Love, Mother." She loved poetry. Oliver's voice came from behind her, and Zelda startled, nearly dropping the book. He had come back inside without her hearing. "Used to read to me when I was a boy. I am not much for fancy words myself, but I kept her books. Sometimes I read them and I can almost hear her voice." "That is beautiful," Zelda said, carefully replacing the volume. "My father loved books too. He was a teacher before his health failed. I think that is why I spent so much time reading instead of learning practical skills. He never minded that I was useless in the kitchen as long as I could discuss literature with him." "You are not useless," Oliver said firmly. "You are just unpracticed. There is a difference." Before she could respond, the sound of an approaching wagon drew their attention. Through the window, they saw an older man in dark clothes climbing down from a small buggy, a leather book tucked under his arm. "That is Reverend Taylor," Oliver said. He looked at Zelda, his expression suddenly vulnerable. "Last chance to change your mind." "I am not changing my mind," she said, and meant it. The Reverend was a kind-faced man in his 60s, with silver hair and gentle eyes. He greeted them both warmly, showing no surprise at the unusual circumstances. Likely he had married many mail-order brides in this territory. "Shall we proceed?" he asked, opening his book. They stood together in the main room, the midday light streaming through the windows. There were no flowers, no guests, no music, just two people speaking vows that would bind them together for life. Oliver's voice was steady as he promised to honor and care for her. When it was Zelda's turn, she found her own voice surprisingly strong, the words feeling right even in their strangeness. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Taylor said, closing his book with a smile. "Oliver, you may kiss your bride." Oliver looked at Zelda, silently asking permission. She nodded slightly, and he leaned down, pressing his lips to hers in a kiss that was brief and chaste but held a world of promise. His lips were warm, gentle, and Zelda felt something flutter in her chest. The Reverend stayed for a simple lunch, making pleasant conversation about the town and the territory, then took his leave with well wishes for their happiness. And then they were alone, husband and wife, standing in the house that was now theirs together. "Well," Oliver said, a slight flush coloring his weathered cheeks, "I suppose we should figure out supper." "Together?" Zelda asked. "Together." They moved into the kitchen, and Oliver began pulling out ingredients. "I thought we could try stew." "It is hard to ruin stew, and it will give us meals for a few days." "What do I do?" He handed her a knife and several potatoes. "Peel these and cut them into chunks. I will handle the meat." They worked side by side, Oliver giving quiet instructions, Zelda following them carefully. The potatoes were manageable, though her chunks were uneven. She moved on to carrots while Oliver cut beef into cubes and browned them in a large pot. The smell of searing meat filled the kitchen, savory and promising. "Now everything goes in the pot together," Oliver said. Meat, potatoes, carrots, onions, water, and seasonings. Then we let it simmer for a few hours. Zelda helped him add everything to the pot, and Oliver positioned it on the stove, adjusting the heat. "That is it for now. We just need to check on it occasionally, make sure it is not boiling too hard or running dry." "That seems almost too simple. The best cooking usually is." He wiped his hands on a towel and looked at her. "You did well. I chopped vegetables, hardly an accomplishment. It is a start." He paused, then added, "Would you like to see more of the ranch? We have a few hours before the stew is ready." They walked out into the afternoon sunshine, and Oliver showed her around the property. The barn was well organized, with stalls for horses and storage for hay and equipment. The two hired hands were out checking on the cattle, so Zelda did not meet them yet. Oliver showed her the chicken coop, which did indeed need repairs, and the neglected garden plot. "I mostly just let things grow wild here," he admitted. "I plant a few things in spring, but I do not have time to tend it properly." Zelda surveyed the plot, seeing potential beneath the weeds. "I think I can work with this. It will need a lot of attention, but we could have fresh vegetables all summer if I do it right." They walked down to the creek that ran through the property, a clear stream bubbling over smooth stones. Trees grew along its banks, providing welcome shade. It was peaceful here, the sound of water soothing. "I come here sometimes when I need to think," Oliver said, sitting on a large flat rock near the water. "It is my favorite spot on the whole ranch." Zelda sat beside him, careful to maintain a respectful distance. They were married now, but still strangers in so many ways. "It is beautiful. So different from anything I knew in Boston." "Do you miss it?" "The city," she considered the question honestly. "I miss my father, I miss having someone who knew me, but the city itself. No, I felt trapped there, especially after he died. Like the walls were closing in. Here, everything is so open." "It is frightening in a way, but also freeing." Oliver nodded slowly. "I have never been to a city. The biggest place I have seen is Denver, and that was overwhelming enough. I cannot imagine Boston. Crowded, noisy, gray. The sky never looks as blue as it does here. There are beautiful things, of course, but they are different kinds of beauty. Museums and theaters and grand buildings. But this," she gestured at the landscape around them, "this feels alive in a way the city never did." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the water flow past. A hawk circled overhead, riding the thermals. In the distance, the mountains stood eternal. "I am glad you are here, Zelda," Oliver said quietly. "I was worried for so long that I had made a mistake, asking a stranger to come west, worried it was selfish. But sitting here with you now, it feels right." "I am glad I came," she answered honestly. "I was terrified on the train, convinced I had made a terrible decision. But you have been kind, and this place, it feels like it could be home." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something passed between them, a recognition, a possibility. Then he stood, offering his hand to help her up. "We should check on the stew." They walked back to the house hand in hand, a small gesture that felt significant. Inside, the stew was bubbling gently, filling the house with rich aromas. Oliver checked it, adjusted the heat slightly, and declared it needed another hour. "I need to ride out and check the south pasture before dark," he said. "You are welcome to come along or stay here and rest." "Either way is fine." "I will come," Zelda said. "I should learn about the ranch if I am going to live here." He saddled 2 horses, a large bay for himself and a smaller sorrel mare for her. "Daisy is gentle," he assured her, helping her mount. "She will take care of you." They rode out across the rangeland, Oliver pointing out landmarks and explaining the boundaries of his property. Cattle grazed in scattered groups, red and white bodies dotting the golden grass. The hired hands, Marcus and Tom, were working with a small group of calves, and Oliver introduced Zelda briefly. Both men were polite, welcoming, showing no surprise at the new bride. "Boss needed a good woman," Marcus, the older of the two, said with a grin. "Maybe now he will stop working himself to death." Oliver shook his head good-naturedly, and they rode on. They covered several miles, and Zelda was grateful for the gentle horse beneath her. She had ridden some as a girl, but not often, and her muscles were already protesting the unusual exercise. The sun was lowering toward the mountains when they returned to the ranch. Oliver tended to the horses while Zelda went inside to check the stew. It had thickened beautifully, the vegetables tender, the meat falling apart. She carefully ladled some into bowls, surprised by her own sense of accomplishment. She had helped make this. It might be simple, but it was real. Oliver came in and washed up, then sat at the table. Zelda set a bowl in front of him, holding her breath. He took a spoonful, chewed thoughtfully, and smiled. "This is good, Zelda, really good. You are sure? The potatoes are not too hard. The meat is not too tough. It is perfect." He took another bite to prove his point. "See, not a disaster at all." She sat down with her own bowl, tasting cautiously. It was good, hearty, and satisfying. Relief washed over her. "We did not burn down the house. I call that a successful first meal together." They ate companionably, and after supper, Zelda insisted on washing the dishes while Oliver saw to some evening chores. The domesticity of it felt strange and right at the same time. This was her life now, this house, this man, this wild, beautiful place. When Oliver came back inside, the sun had fully set, leaving the house lit by oil lamps. He looked uncertain suddenly, standing in the doorway. "I can stay in the other room again tonight if you prefer," he said carefully. "I do not want to rush you." Zelda felt her cheeks warm. "We are married now." "We are, but that does not mean you have to be ready for everything all at once. I can be patient." The kindness in his words made her chest tight. "One more night in separate rooms," she said quietly. "Just to get used to everything, if that is all right with you." "Of course." The relief in his voice was evident. "There is no hurry, Zelda. We have all the time we need." They said goodnight, and Zelda retreated to her room. She changed into her nightgown and slipped into bed, listening to Oliver moving around in the other room. The house settled around her with creaks and sighs, the sounds of a home lived in. Tomorrow they would wake up and face another day together, building their life piece by piece. The thought brought a smile to her face as sleep pulled her under. The next few days fell into a rhythm. Oliver would wake early and see to the most pressing ranch work, while Zelda made breakfast, usually something simple like oatmeal or eggs. They would eat together, discussing the day's plans, then tackle lunch preparations before Oliver headed out to work with the cattle or mend fences, or any of the 100 other tasks that needed doing. Zelda spent her time exploring the house, starting to clean out the garden plot, and attempting to learn more about cooking from the few recipe books she found in the kitchen. Some attempts went better than others. The bread she tried to make on the third day came out dense as a brick. Oliver gamely ate his slice anyway, though she saw him reach for the butter to make it more palatable. "It has potential," he said diplomatically. "It could be used as a weapon," Zelda countered. "Or possibly a building material," he laughed, the sound coming more easily now. "The stew was good, remember. We can keep making stew until we figure out the bread. A diet of exclusively stew might become tiresome. Then we will expand gradually. No sense rushing and getting discouraged." On the fourth night, after they had eaten another successful stew and some passable biscuits Oliver had helped her make, they sat on the porch watching the sun set. The evening air was cooling, pleasant after the heat of the day. "Thank you for being patient with me," Zelda said quietly. "Both with the cooking and everything else. I know this situation is not normal. Nothing about life out here is normal by city standards, I expect," Oliver said. He was sitting close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "But we are finding our way. That is what matters." "Are you happy I came?" The question slipped out before she could stop it, vulnerable and needy. "Yes," he answered without hesitation. "The house feels different with you in it, better. I did not realize how quiet it had gotten until there was someone else here. And even when you are frustrated with the bread or worried about the cooking, I like having you here. I like talking to you, hearing your thoughts about things. You are easy to be around, Zelda." Her heart did something complicated in her chest. "You are easy to be around too." "You are nothing like I expected." "What did you expect?" "I do not know exactly. Someone harder maybe, or more rough. The cowboys in dime novels are always either dangerous rogues or completely stoic heroes. You are neither of those things." "Should I be insulted or flattered?" "Flattered, definitely. You are real, which is better than any novel character." She paused, then added more quietly, "I would like to share a room with you if the offer still stands." Oliver turned to look at her, the fading light catching in his blue eyes. "Are you certain we are married?" "And I trust you. So yes, I am certain." "Then tonight if you want." They finished watching the sunset in silence, but Oliver reached over and took her hand, his rough palm warm against hers. When full dark had fallen, they went inside together, and this time Zelda followed him to the larger bedroom. He was gentle with her, patient, taking his time. There was awkwardness, of course, the inevitable fumbling of two people learning each other. But there was also tenderness, care, and by the time Zelda fell asleep in his arms, she felt something had fundamentally shifted between them. They were not just two strangers bound by convenience anymore. They were becoming partners, companions, maybe even the beginning of something deeper. Over the following weeks, life on the ranch settled into patterns. Zelda's cooking improved slowly but surely under Oliver's tutelage. She learned to make decent bread, not as good as his but edible. She mastered beans and bacon, could roast meat without burning it too badly, and even managed a passable pie using dried apples. There were still disasters: a pot of soup that somehow curdled, scrambled eggs that turned rubbery and gray, but Oliver ate everything without complaint, true to his word. The garden began to take shape under her dedicated attention. She weeded and watered, planted late-season vegetables, coaxed life from the neglected earth. Green shoots began to appear, and she felt a fierce pride in each one. She met the ranch hands properly, finding both Marcus and Tom to be decent men who treated her with respect. They clearly thought highly of Oliver, and their regard seemed to extend to her as his wife. Sometimes they would join them for supper, bringing news from town or stories about the cattle, and Zelda enjoyed the company, the sense of being part of something larger. In town, Oliver introduced her to the few neighbors and the shopkeepers. Durango was small but growing, servicing the ranches and mines in the area. The town had a mercantile, a bank, a hotel with a restaurant, a saloon, a blacksmith, and a small church where Reverend Taylor preached on Sundays. Oliver took her to church that first Sunday, and several women approached her after the service, welcoming her with varying degrees of warmth. Some seemed genuinely glad for her, others more curious than kind, but no one was openly hostile. "Give them time," Oliver said on the ride home. "Newcomers are always objects of interest for a while. Once they have something else to talk about, they will leave you be." But Zelda found she did not mind the attention too much. After the loneliness of Boston, after feeling invisible and unwanted, there was something affirming about being noticed, being part of a community, however small. The days grew into weeks, and summer deepened. The work was constant but satisfying. Zelda learned to collect eggs without breaking them, to churn butter, to preserve vegetables for winter. Her hands grew rough, her skin tanned despite her bonnet. She learned the rhythms of ranch life, the early mornings and long days, the simple pleasures of a job well done. And through it all, her feelings for Oliver grew. It started as respect and gratitude, appreciation for his kindness and patience. But as she learned his habits and quirks, as she watched him work and listened to him talk, something deeper took root. She loved the way he was gentle with the animals, the way he could fix anything with his capable hands. She loved his dry humor, the rare but genuine smiles he gave her. She loved the sound of his voice in the darkness, the weight of his arm around her at night. One evening in late August, they sat by the creek in their favorite spot, enjoying the cool air. They had spent the day riding the boundary lines, checking fences, and Zelda was pleasantly tired, her muscles aching in ways she had grown accustomed to. "I have been thinking," Oliver said, breaking the comfortable silence, "about the house. There is room to expand if we wanted, add on another bedroom, maybe make the kitchen bigger. Planning for the future?" Zelda asked, smiling, hoping for it. He looked at her, his expression serious. "When we married, I did not let myself expect too much. Figured we would see how things went, take it day by day. But Zelda, I need you to know, these past weeks with you, they have been the best of my life. I do not want this to just be an arrangement anymore. I want this to be real. I want us to be real." Her heart was suddenly pounding. "What are you saying?" "I am saying I am falling in love with you. Maybe I have been since the day you got off that train and looked at me like you were willing to give this strange life a chance. You are brave and funny and kind, and you make this place feel like a home instead of just a house. I know you did not come here expecting love, but I am hoping maybe you could find it anyway. With me." Tears pricked at Zelda's eyes, happy tears this time. "Oliver McAllister, I am already in love with you. I think I have been for weeks now. I was just afraid to say it, afraid it was too soon or too strange or that you would not feel the same way. You love me." He said it like he could not quite believe it. "Even though you have seen me at my worst, covered in dust and smelling like cattle, especially then." She laughed through her tears. "You are a good man, Oliver, the best man I have ever known. I came here desperate and afraid, and you have given me everything, a home, a purpose, kindness, respect. And somehow in the middle of all that, you gave me your heart too. How could I not love you?" He pulled her close, kissing her with more passion than he ever had before, and she kissed him back with equal fervor. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "We are going to have a good life together," he promised. "I swear it." "We already do," she answered, and meant it. The ride back to the ranch felt different somehow, charged with new understanding. They were not just making the best of an arrangement anymore. They were building something real, something lasting, something born of choice rather than necessity. That night, they made love with new intensity, new honesty, and afterward, lying tangled together, Zelda felt more at peace than she ever had in her life. This was where she belonged. This wild place, this good man, this life they were creating together. As autumn approached, the work intensified. Oliver and the hired hands prepared for the fall cattle sale, cutting out the animals ready for market. Zelda helped where she could, mostly keeping everyone fed and the household running smoothly. Her cooking had improved to the point where no one had to pretend to enjoy the meals anymore, and she took fierce pride in that simple accomplishment. She had also become more involved in the ranch's operations, learning the business side from Oliver, understanding the economics of cattle ranching, the markets, the challenges. He valued her input, discussing decisions with her, asking her opinion. It made her feel like a true partner, not just a wife but a full participant in their shared enterprise. In September, they went to town for supplies and encountered some trouble. A man at the mercantile, clearly drunk despite the early hour, made some crude comments about mail-order brides. Oliver stepped between them immediately, his voice low and dangerous in a way Zelda had never heard before. "That is my wife you are talking about. You will apologize, or we will settle this outside." The drunk backed down, muttering something that might have been an apology, and they left with their supplies. On the ride home, Oliver was quiet, his jaw tight. "I am sorry you had to hear that," he finally said. "It was not your fault." People can be cruel, especially about things they do not understand. "Let them talk," Zelda said firmly. "I know what we have, what we mean to each other. Their opinions do not matter." He reached over and squeezed her hand. "You are something else, Zelda Simpson McAllister." She smiled at the sound of her full name, her married name. "I could say the same about you." The first snow came in October, early even for the mountains, dusting the peaks and bringing a sharp chill to the air. Oliver and the hands worked frantically to get the cattle moved to winter pastures closer to the ranch. Zelda spent her days preserving the last of the garden harvest, stocking the root cellar, preparing for the long winter ahead. One evening, after a particularly hard day's work, Oliver came in to find Zelda had prepared a special supper, beef roast with vegetables and fresh bread, followed by apple pie. "What is the occasion?" he asked, washing up. "No occasion. Just wanted to do something nice." She was pleased by how well everything had turned out, how far her skills had come. They ate in comfortable silence, and Oliver had 2 pieces of pie, which she took as high praise. "You remember when you told me you could not cook?" he asked, pushing his plate away with satisfaction. "I really could not at the time. You can now. This was delicious, all of it. I had a good teacher." She reached across the table and took his hand, "and a patient one. We have learned a lot together these past months," he said, "about cooking and ranching and each other. No regrets." "Not a single one." He stood and pulled her up into his arms. "Best decision I ever made, writing that advertisement. Second best was opening your letter." "What was the best?" "Marrying you the day after you arrived. If I had waited, I might have lost my nerve." She laughed and kissed him. "I do not think you have ever lost your nerve about anything in your life. You did not see me pacing the platform waiting for your train. Marcus said I looked like I might run for the hills any minute." The image of this strong, capable man nervous about meeting her made Zelda's heart melt. "I am glad you stayed." "Me too." Winter settled over the ranch gradually, then all at once. Snow fell in earnest, piling up in drifts, transforming the landscape into something beautiful and harsh. The work changed but never stopped. There was always something to do, animals to tend, paths to clear, repairs to make. The days were short, the nights long, and they spent many evenings by the fire, Oliver reading aloud from his mother's poetry books while Zelda mended clothes or worked on a quilt she was piecing together. "You know, I never thought I would enjoy poetry," she said one night, "but hearing you read it, I understand what your mother saw in it." "She always said poetry was truth dressed up in beautiful words," Oliver said. "That the best poems said things people felt but could not express themselves." "Read me your favorite." He flipped through the pages, finding a well-worn section, and read in his low voice. It was a love poem, simple and honest, about 2 souls finding each other against all odds. When he finished, Zelda had tears in her eyes. "That is us," she whispered. two souls finding each other. He set the book aside and pulled her close. I love you, Zelda, more than I thought I could love anyone. I love you too, so much it scares me sometimes. Why does it scare you? Because I have lost people I loved before. My mother when I was young, my father. I am afraid of losing you too. You will not lose me, he promised. I plan to be around for a very long time. We have too much to do together. She nestled closer, drawing comfort from his solid presence. Outside, the wind howled, but inside they were warm and safe together. Christmas came, and they celebrated quietly. Zelda had knitted Oliver a new scarf, and he had secretly bought her books from the catalog, novels she had mentioned missing from her father's library. They exchanged gifts Christmas morning, both touched by the thoughtfulness behind each present. I have never been much for celebrating, Oliver admitted. After my mother passed, it seemed like too much effort for just me. But this year, with you here, it feels worth it. Next year we can invite Marcus and Tom, make a real dinner of it, Zelda suggested. Next year, Oliver agreed, and the promise of future Christmases together warmed her more than the fire. As winter wore on, Zelda began to suspect something that both thrilled and terrified her. She said nothing at first, wanting to be certain, but as the signs became unmistakable, she knew she had to tell Oliver. She chose a quiet evening in late January. They had finished supper and were sitting by the fire. She had been trying to find the right words all day. Oliver, I need to tell you something. He looked up from the harness he was mending, immediately attentive. What is wrong? Nothing is wrong, at least I do not think so. She took a breath. I am fairly certain I am with child. His hand stilled on the leather. You are sure? As sure as I can be. All the signs are there. He set aside the harness and moved to kneel in front of her chair, taking both her hands. How do you feel about it? Scared, she admitted. Happy but scared. I do not know anything about babies. We will learn together, same as everything else. His face was alight with joy. A baby, our baby. You are happy. Happy does not begin to cover it. He pulled her into his arms. Thank you, Zelda. Thank you for everything you have given me. She clung to him, her own fears easing. They would face this together, like they faced everything else. The pregnancy progressed through the late winter and into spring. Oliver became even more protective, insisting she rest more, not lift anything heavy. She found it both endearing and slightly frustrating, but understood it came from love and concern. I am pregnant, not made of glass, she protested when he tried to carry a basket of laundry for her. Humor me, he said with a grin. Let me take care of you. You always take care of me. Then let me do it even more. There was a scare in March when she had cramping and bleeding, and Oliver rode through a spring storm to fetch the doctor from town. The doctor, an older woman named Eleanor Franklin, examined Zelda and declared everything was progressing normally, the symptoms nothing to worry about. She is healthy, the baby is healthy, and you need to stop panicking at every little thing, Dr. Franklin told Oliver sternly. First-time fathers are always the worst. I just want her safe, Oliver said, his face pale. She is safe. Now go make yourself useful and let her rest. After the doctor left, Oliver sat beside the bed holding Zelda's hand. I am sorry for panicking. I was scared too, she admitted. But everything is all right. We are all right. I could not bear it if something happened to you. Nothing is going to happen to me. I am strong, Dr. Franklin said so. He raised her hand to his lips. The strongest person I know. As spring turned to summer, Zelda's belly grew round and her energy returned. She worked in the garden, which was flourishing under her second year of care, and continued to manage the household. The baby kicked and rolled, especially active in the evenings, and Oliver would place his hand on her belly, marveling at each movement. I think we have a fighter in there, he said one night, feeling a particularly strong kick. Your child certainly, Zelda agreed. Stubborn and strong-willed. I hope they get your intelligence and kindness, and your sense of humor and work ethic. They spent many evenings like that, talking about the future, planning for the child, dreaming of the family they were becoming. In August, as Zelda's time drew near, Oliver became increasingly anxious. He arranged for Dr. Franklin to be on call, made sure everything was ready, even built a beautiful cradle from smooth pine, sanding it for hours until it was perfect. You are going to wear a hole in the floor with all that pacing, Marcus joked one afternoon. The baby will come when it is ready. I know, I just want everything to be perfect. Boss, you have been preparing for months. You are as ready as anyone can be. But when Zelda's labor started on a hot afternoon in late August, Oliver still panicked. He sent Tom racing for the doctor and hovered anxiously while Marcus's wife Mary, who had assisted at many births, helped Zelda through the early stages. Oliver, you need to breathe, Zelda said between contractions, somehow managing to be concerned for him even in her own pain. I am breathing. Are you breathing? Is the doctor coming? All is well, boss, Mary said calmly. First babies take their time. Doctor will be here long before we need her. Dr. Franklin arrived an hour later, by which time Oliver was nearly beside himself. She shooed him out of the room, saying he was making Zelda more nervous. But I want to be with her. And you can be once you calm down. Right now you are making things worse. Go split some wood or something. He retreated to the porch, where Marcus and Tom kept him company through the long afternoon and into evening. The sun was setting when they finally heard the thin wail of a baby crying. Dr. Franklin emerged, smiling. You have a son, and your wife is tired but fine. Give us a few minutes to get them settled, then you can come in. A son. Oliver felt his knees go weak with relief and joy. When he was finally allowed in, he found Zelda propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. Come meet your son, she said softly. Oliver approached slowly, almost reverently. The baby was red-faced and wrinkled, with a shock of dark hair and eyes squeezed shut. He was the most beautiful thing Oliver had ever seen. He is perfect, Oliver whispered. You are perfect. I cannot believe we made this. Sit down before you fall down, Zelda said with a tired laugh. And hold your son. She showed him how to support the baby's head, and Oliver took his son in his arms, marveling at the tiny weight, the delicate features. The baby yawned, opened his eyes briefly, unfocused blue like his father's, then settled back to sleep. Have you thought about names? Dr. Franklin asked, packing up her supplies. What about Owen after your father? Oliver suggested, looking at Zelda, her eyes filled with tears. You would do that, of course. He raised an incredible daughter. It would be an honor. Owen McAllister, Zelda tried out the name. I like it. Owen Marcus McAllister, maybe, after the man who has been such a good friend to us. Oliver nodded, knowing Marcus would be touched. Perfect. Dr. Franklin left them alone with instructions to rest and call if there were any concerns. Oliver sat on the edge of the bed, one arm around Zelda. The baby nestled between them and felt more complete than he ever had in his life. This is everything I never knew I wanted, he said quietly. This family, this life with you. With you, Zelda echoed, resting her head on his shoulder. The first weeks with a newborn were exhausting but joyful. Owen was a good baby for the most part, but still demanded constant attention. Oliver insisted on helping with everything, changing diapers, walking the floor with the baby at night, anything to ease Zelda's burden. You need to sleep too, she protested when he got up for the third time one night to soothe the crying baby. I can sleep later. You are still recovering. He was endlessly patient, endlessly gentle with both wife and son. and Zelda fell even more deeply in love with him watching him care for their child. As Owen grew from newborn to infant, the ranch routine adjusted around him. Zelda learned to manage household tasks while keeping an eye on the baby. Mary came by often to help and offer advice, and Zelda was grateful for the friendship that developed between them. Oliver was a devoted father, finding time despite his work to play with Owen, to hold him and sing to him in that low voice. The baby would watch his father with wide eyes, already seeming to recognize him. "He has your chin," Zelda observed one evening as they sat on the porch, Owen in her arms. "And your stubborn streak." "My stubborn streak. You are the one who insisted on working in the garden until 2 days before he was born. That is determination, not stubbornness, if you say so." He grinned and leaned over to kiss her temple. "How did I get so lucky?" "I think we both got lucky, finding each other against all the odds." Life settled into new rhythms. Owen grew and thrived, hitting each milestone to his parents' delight. He smiled early, laughed easily, and seemed to inherit the best of both of them. The ranch prospered, the cattle herd growing, the business expanding. Oliver built the addition to the house as he had planned, giving them more space, preparing for the future. When Owen was a year old, they held a small party, inviting the ranch hands and their families, a few neighbors, Reverend Taylor. It was nothing fancy, but it filled the house with warmth and laughter. Marcus presented Owen with a small carved horse, beautifully detailed. "For when he is old enough to ride," Marcus said, and Zelda hugged him, touched by the thoughtfulness. That night, after everyone had gone and Owen was asleep in his cradle, Oliver and Zelda sat on the porch watching the stars. "2 years ago today, you arrived on the train," Oliver said. "Do you remember? How could I forget? I was terrified. I was too. Thought you would take one look at me in this rough place and want to run. Instead, I found home." He pulled her close. "Think you might want to add to our family in the future," she smiled against his shoulder. "I think Owen would like a brother or sister eventually, but maybe we wait a little while, enjoy him being small." "No rush," Oliver agreed. "We have all the time in the world." They did wait, enjoying Owen's toddler years, watching him learn to walk and talk and explore his world. He was a happy child, curious and bold, and he adored both his parents. Oliver taught him about the ranch, letting him help with small tasks, and Owen took to it naturally, already comfortable around animals and the outdoors. Zelda's cooking had long since progressed beyond merely adequate. She could make anything now, from simple meals to elaborate Sunday dinners. She even taught herself to make the fancy desserts she remembered from Boston, adapting recipes to what was available. The meals she set on the table were something to be proud of, and Oliver never failed to praise them. "Remember when you were worried you could not cook?" he asked one evening after an especially good meal. "I remember you promised to eat whatever I made gladly, even the disasters. And I meant it, but I am glad I do not have to eat rock-hard bread and burned soup anymore." "So am I," she admitted with a laugh. When Owen was 3, Zelda realized she was pregnant again. She told Oliver on their anniversary, presenting him with a tiny knitted booty. Again, his face lit up. "Really, really, I hope you are ready for another one." "I am ready for as many as you want to give me." He swept her into his arms, careful of her belly. "I love you so much, Zelda. I love our life, our family, everything we have built. I love you too, more than I can ever say." The second pregnancy was easier, perhaps because Zelda knew what to expect, perhaps because she was stronger now, used to the physical demands of ranch life. She continued working through most of it, only slowing down in the final weeks. Owen was excited about becoming a big brother, though he did not quite understand what it meant. He would pat Zelda's belly and talk to the baby, telling it about the horses and cows and everything he thought was important. This time when labor started, Oliver was calmer. He still sent for Dr. Franklin, but he did not panic, just stayed by Zelda's side, supporting her through each contraction. The birth went smoothly, and by dawn they had a daughter, small and dark-haired like her mother. "A girl," Zelda whispered, holding her daughter. "Oliver, we have a daughter." He touched the baby's tiny hand, watched her fingers curl instinctively around his. "She is beautiful. What should we name her? What was your mother's name?" "Sarah Ann McAllister." Zelda smiled. "It is perfect." Owen met his sister with wide-eyed wonder, peering into the blanket at her tiny face. "Baby," he said solemnly, as though making an important announcement. "This is your sister Sarah," Oliver told him. "You are going to help take care of her." "I help," Owen agreed seriously, already taking his new role to heart. The ranch house that had once seemed too large and empty now rang with the sounds of family. Children's laughter, the daily chaos of meals and bedtimes, the sweet exhaustion of parenting. It was everything Oliver had hoped for when he had placed that advertisement, everything Zelda had dreamed of when she had answered it. Years passed in a blur of growth and change. Owen grew tall and strong, taking after his father in build and temperament. Sarah was quieter, more thoughtful, with her mother's love of books and learning. They fought like siblings but loved each other fiercely. The ranch continued to prosper under Oliver's careful management and Zelda's partnership. They expanded the cattle operation, added sheep, improved their breeding stock. They became known in the territory for quality animals and fair dealing. Zelda became involved in the community, helping establish a small school in Durango, serving on the church committee, befriending other ranch wives. She was respected, valued, no longer an object of curiosity but a full member of the community. On their 10th anniversary, Oliver took her back to the creek, their special place. The children were with Marcus and Mary for the evening, giving them rare time alone. 10 years, Oliver said, sitting on their favorite rock. Hard to believe sometimes. "The best 10 years of my life," Zelda said. She was 33 now, no longer the uncertain young woman who had stepped off the train. She was confident, capable, deeply content with the life she had built. "Mine, too." He took her hand. "I need to tell you something." "That sounds ominous." "It is not, I promise. I have been thinking about those first days when you told me you could not cook, and I said I would eat whatever you made gladly. I remember. You kept that promise through some truly terrible meals. I would make that promise again in a heartbeat. But the thing is, it was never really about the cooking. I would have been happy eating charred meat and burned bread for the rest of my life if it meant having you here. What I was really saying was that I would take you as you were, whatever that meant. That I was willing to build a life together no matter what challenges we faced." Tears filled Zelda's eyes. "Oliver, let me finish. You came here brave and honest, willing to try something most people would think was crazy. You have worked so hard, learned so much, given me everything I could ever want. 2 beautiful children, a real home, partnership, love. You have made my life better in every possible way, so I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for answering that advertisement, for taking a chance on me, for building this life with me." "You make it sound like I did you some great favor," Zelda said, wiping her eyes. "But Oliver, you saved me. I was desperate and alone and terrified, and you gave me everything. A home, a purpose, a family. You treated me with kindness and respect from the very first day. You believed in me when I did not believe in myself. You taught me that I was capable of so much more than I thought. I am the one who should be thanking you. Then we are even." He kissed her softly. "Here is to the next 10 years and all the ones after that." "To forever," Zelda agreed. They sat by the creek as the sun set, just as they had so many times before. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something real and lasting. More years passed. Owen, at 18, took on more responsibility at the ranch, proving himself a capable cattleman. Sarah, at 15, announced her intention to become a teacher, much to Zelda's delight. Two more children joined the family, another boy and another girl, keeping the house lively. Oliver's hair turned silver at the temples, his face more lined but still strong. Zelda found gray in her own dark hair but did not mind. They had earned every gray hair, every wrinkle, through hard work and love and the beautiful challenge of raising a family. On their 20th anniversary, their children threw them a party. Half the territory seemed to show up, filling the expanded house and spilling out into the yard. There was music and dancing and so much food that even Zelda's improved cooking skills were supplemented by dishes from every neighbor. Marcus, now in his 60s but still spry, raised a toast. 20 years ago, Oliver was the loneliest cowboy in Colorado. Then he got smart and sent for a bride. Best decision he ever made. To Oliver and Zelda, may you have 20 more. 20 more, the crowd echoed, raising glasses. Later, when most guests had left and only close friends and family remained, Oliver stood with Zelda on the porch, watching their children and grandchildren play in the yard. Owen had married 2 years earlier, and his wife was expecting their first child. "We are going to be grandparents," Oliver said, still sounding slightly amazed by the concept. "We are," Zelda agreed. "Hard to believe sometimes how much has changed. Some things have not changed." He looked at her with the same intensity he had that first day at the train station. "I love you just as much now as I did then." "More, maybe." "More," Zelda confirmed. "Definitely more. We have built something incredible together, Oliver." "We have, and we are not done yet. Still have years ahead of us, things to do, grandchildren to spoil, plans to make, meals to share." "Even if you burn them," he teased. "I have not burned a meal in 15 years, and you know it." "True. You have become an excellent cook, but I meant what I said that first day. I would eat anything you made gladly just for the pleasure of sitting across the table from you." She kissed him there on the porch in front of God and their family and anyone who cared to see, kissing him with all the love and passion and gratitude she felt. When they finally broke apart, she said, "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think we should go inside and cut into that cake before the children eat it all. And then I think we should sit by the fire and read poetry like we used to do." "That sounds perfect." They went inside hand in hand, into the house that had been built with hope and sustained by love, into the life they had created together from nothing but courage and a leap of faith. The next years brought their share of challenges. Hard winters and dry summers, cattle prices that fluctuated, the normal trials of ranch life. But they faced everything together, just as they always had. Their partnership, forged in those early uncertain days, proved unshakable. Owen took over more of the ranch operations as Oliver aged, though the older man never fully retired. He was too much a rancher at heart to stop working. But he did slow down, spending more time with Zelda, with their growing gaggle of grandchildren. Sarah did become a teacher, opening a small school on the ranch property for the children of nearby families. She had inherited her mother's patience and her father's steady nature, and she was beloved by her students. The younger children grew and found their own paths, some staying near the ranch, others venturing out into the wider world. But they all came home for holidays and celebrations, filling the house with noise and love. On a crisp autumn evening, 25 years after Zelda had stepped off the train in Durango, she and Oliver sat on their porch watching the sunset. It had become their favorite time of day, these quiet moments together. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had not answered my advertisement?" Oliver asked. Zelda considered the question seriously. "Sometimes, but I cannot really imagine it. This life with you, it feels like the only life I was meant to have. No regrets. Not a single one. Everything I have, everything I am, it all started that day I decided to take a chance on a cowboy in Colorado who promised to eat my terrible cooking gladly. Best promise I ever made." He squeezed her hand. "And the easiest to keep." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned from gold to pink to purple. The mountains stood eternal in the distance, the same mountains that had witnessed their arrival, their struggles, their triumphs. The ranch spread out before them, solid and prosperous, built by their hands and sustained by their love. Inside, they could hear their grandchildren playing, their laughter floating out through the open windows. The next generation, carrying on what Oliver and Zelda had started. "We did good," Oliver said softly. "We did," Zelda agreed. "We did very good." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, they rose and went inside, into the warm house filled with family and love, into the life they had built together one day, one meal, one choice at a time. The house that had once known only silence now echoed with the sounds of life. Somewhere in the kitchen, their eldest granddaughter was attempting to make cookies under Zelda's patient instruction, the same instruction Oliver had given Zelda so many years ago. The little girl was perhaps a bit too enthusiastic with the flour, and Zelda gently corrected her with the same kindness she had always received. "It is all right if it does not turn out perfect," Zelda told her. "The important thing is trying and doing it with love." "Is that what Grandpa told you when you were learning?" "Something like that," Zelda said with a smile, catching Oliver's eye across the room. They had come so far from those uncertain early days, but the foundation they had built then remained solid. Trust, respect, patience, and love. Always love. That night, after the grandchildren had been collected by their parents and the house had quieted down, Oliver and Zelda prepared for bed in the room they had shared for a quarter-century. The routine was comfortable, familiar, each knowing the other's rhythms. "Happy?" Oliver asked, as he often did. "Always," Zelda answered, as she always did. They settled into bed, Oliver's arm coming around her automatically, Zelda's head finding its customary place on his shoulder. Through the window, they could see the stars scattered across the vast Colorado sky. "I love you, Zelda McAllister," Oliver murmured into her hair. "I love you, Oliver McAllister," she answered. And in that moment, in that room, in that house built by hope and sustained by love, they were complete. Two strangers who had taken a chance on each other had built not just a life but a legacy, not just a marriage but a love story that would echo through generations. The wind whispered through the pines outside, carrying with it the scent of sage and coming snow. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new moments to treasure. But tonight, they had everything they needed, everything they had always needed each other. And it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.